Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of AudioVerse, a VideoVerse podcast.
Hello.
Hey, yeah, so it's me, Gavin, and I'm here with DJ,
Me, DJ.
the one and only DJ.
The one and only.
There's never been another DJ.
I hope not.
So this is going to be a more I don't want to say more structured podcast, but this is what we're going to try to practice a formula of podcast that is different from our first one that we did with Brandon and Cole. That one was in many ways a test podcast and also in many ways a school project for DJ.
Yeah, I mean, it went pretty decent.
Did you was that ever graded? Did you ever has it graded yet?
No, because it's the final project, so it's not due until the end of the semester.
Oh.
It was like mid-May.
Okay, so we just got it done kind of early.
Pretty much.
Cool. Do you know if anyone else got theirs done, or are you like...
I have zero clue.
Okay, cool. So before we jump into our main topic today, which is going to be Final Fantasy IX. We're going to go through... maybe just like some either community stories or, just kind of what's going on and stuff happening in the world, stuff pertaining to, media like movies or music or games and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me and DJ, since we live in the same town, the governor of Austin, as of yesterday, he announced that very, very soon they're about to start lifting the coronavirus, stay inside lockdown.
Yeah.
And I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? Do you have I know we sort of discussed a little bit what we would do, once lockdown is done, but I mean, do you have any particular thoughts?
Well, since with this whole thing, and I work at a grocery store, I've been working, and so I've kind of been there with being all around people and stuff. It's definitely interesting because at the very beginning it was super hectic and stuff, when the whole COVID-19 seriously really got into effect and stuff like that. It was just, we just couldn't handle it. There was just so many customers coming in, both for the front end with the cashiers or on curbside too. It was very hectic and hard to handle. But then eventually we got it kind of settled. We had a system with the whole the masks and the sick can't be within 6 feet of people, which honestly is kind of annoying, but I understand the need for that. And now that's where just because I was told that apparently starting Friday, when we're recording this, that customers don't have to wear masks anymore, but employees still have to wear masks, which is interesting. It's kind of weird. It's kind of nice too, because just it's not as crazy. Which, speaking of which, ever since things started to slow down, my job is actually kind of gotten slowed down a bit, and I've been able to leave early a bunch of times because we come in at 5 a.m. and we have 18 partners showing up, because normally lately we've been having 300, 400 orders, and so we need all those partners. But now lately we've had 150, 120, which is a lot less in comparison. We don't, by the time, and in 2 or 3 hours, we're already caught up and done, and there's still so much time in the day. It was just shit, we gotta let a bunch of people go early because there's nothing really to do.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's crazy. Yeah, the whole thing with masks too. I went to Walmart a few days ago to pick up some just a few groceries. And I guess I'm just I don't know, I'm not really keeping up too much. I'm not, every second of the day, looking up what's new, what's updating with coronavirus.
Yeah, definitely.
So I went over there and I was walking into Walmart, and then they had a guy with a clipboard or some iPad or something just standing up front, taking tally of people who were walking inside of Walmart.
Really?
Yeah, and I had no idea what was happening. I was like, okay. And as soon as I'm about to walk in, he's like, "You got a mask?" And I was like, not with me. And he was just okay, you can't enter without a mask. I was like, "Y'all don't sell masks?" And he was like, "No." was like, you don't sell masks? I was
Yeah.
like, what the heck? He's like, nah, man, like they're all sold out. I was like, okay, whatever. Thankfully, I went to my car and I actually did have a mask
Nice.
inside the car. So I just walked back and was like, fuck you. But
Yeah, to enter grocery stores, like even for us employees, like as soon as customers come in, we have to have our masks on and
do you
stuff
get
like
like
that.
penalized for not doing that, or?
Well, for me, I've never been penalized because anytime I have my mask on, but I like have it like kind of off, like uncovering my mouth, and they always come up to me like, "Dude, you got to have your mask on," and stuff like that, like above your nose. I'm like, all right.
Right.
I've never been penalized. They never say anything about penalty, but they always definitely like get on your ass, like have your mask on, have your mask on.
Wow. Yeah. Dang, dude. Okay, so all right, moving on to our next sort of thing that I wanted to talk about, aside from the real world, scary stuff. Let's talk about video games.
Yay!
So, The Last of Us Part 2. I don't know if you sort of just kind of like heard what's been going on with Naughty Dog,
Not at
like
all.
the developers of Uncharted and The Last of Us and stuff. So I guess some workers kind of came out a little while ago and they were talking about a really intense crunch on their employees and making sure that this game comes out, on time, and people are working, crazy hours and aren't getting paid enough, I guess. And so very recently, and I think this like the fact is true that game story details were leaked, but I think this is kind of like the rumor that it came from an employee who was like pissed off, essentially, that like they weren't getting paid enough, or just really pissed off about the whole crunch aspect of all of it.
Yeah.
And so to sort of like lash out, they took to the internet and basically, if you want to know everything about the game right now and all of its stories, you can do that. Like, everything is online right
That's so
now.
crazy. I always hear so many stories about like stuff being leaked from video games or anime from like an employee. Someone's like, God damn, how do
Yeah,
these companies
yeah,
like handle that?
right, yeah. And I remember with Kingdom Hearts, it was like with Kingdom Hearts 3, there was like a like one of the employees at like the packaging building or whatever, who like put the discs in the cases and stuff. He
Mm-hmm.
snagged like 10 copies of them, and we're just like selling them on eBay for like $100 or something,
Damn.
so and stuff like that, and things like Final Fantasy VII Remake, like
Yeah.
the demo came out and hackers were able to somehow take from the demo the entire game
Mm-hmm.
and like leak all of the images and cutscenes and story details of the game.
And security is kind of shit.
Yeah, pretty much. And so yeah, I mean, did you ever play the first Last of Us game?
No, I've never played any of them, but it's definitely definitely on my bucket list. That game, I've heard so many good things, and it looks cool.
Yes, I mean, dude, so I played that game for the first time like 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's 2020 now, so I mean, this game that came out like in the early 2010s, like I played it like in 2018. And yeah, personally, I think that the first game is just one of those games that will just forever hold up.
It seems like
It's,
a staple kind of now.
yeah, and just like the like I think it's one of those games that's going to be ported onto every next generation PlayStation console.
Final Fantasy 10 and Skyrim.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so that's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. It's a great game. And I know so many people are really looking forward to the sequel.
Mm-hmm.
And a few days ago, let me see if I can kind of pull it up. A few days ago, Naughty Dog developers took to Twitter, and basically they were just like, our hearts are really broken because, they could confirm that, the game was leaked, and they're like, oh, our hearts are broken. Like, we feel like really sorry for the fans, and like, we feel sorry for our, you know, just like all of our employees and stuff.
Yeah.
I think I have it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right here. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So they went to Twitter and were like, we know the last few days have been incredibly difficult for you. We feel the same. It's disappointing to see the release and sharing of pre-release footage from development. Do your best to avoid spoilers, and we ask that you don't spoil it for the others. Last of Us Part 2 will be in your hands soon. No matter what you see and hear, the final experience will be worth it. And I think that last sentence is interesting because I'm excited for this game. And so, so I'm really not going to look for any spoilers per se, but from what I have heard, people who have seen the spoilers, a big majority of people are pissed off about like the story and like certain, things that they do with characters and stuff like that. And so I'm like, I don't really know how to take that because, I just feel like for me, as someone who is a fan of The Last of Us and is looking forward to those surprises, I'm not going to be looking for those spoilers, but I almost don't know how to take this because I feel like if you're going to look for those spoilers, it's almost like you don't really care as much as the people who do care,
That's true. And plus, like, your expectations are up to a certain point that, anything could really ruin them because usually people's expectations are super high regardless.
Yeah,
exactly. And like, what was I gonna say? And like, I feel like reading something kind of like makes it sound worse than like actually experiencing it. I feel like maybe if you see it first, it'll look better than like actually reading. I'm pretty sure when you read it, it sounds like shit, but then when you see it, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So, it's a very interesting situation. I'm pumped for the game. I don't know anything about the story really of what number 2 is going to include. But
number 2 supposed to be like the last one or just like another sequel?
Well, so I think it's literally because it's called The Last of Us Part 2. So it's almost like this huge story, like and they go like it's like season 1, season 2,
Right. Okay.
Part 2, it's not it's difficult. I don't want to, not that I think the word sequel is dirty or anything, but there's something about just
more like,
yeah, it's just there's something about just the fact that this is The Last of Us Part 2. There's no underlining name to it. It's not like Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories.
Yeah.
Which is the direct sequel to Kingdom Hearts.
The Last.
So it's yeah, there's no like little title to it. They released there was The Last of Us Left Behind, which was literally just some story DLC to the first Last of Us game. Okay. And it like takes place before the main game, but you should play it after you beat the main game.
Okay.
But
did they say when Last of Us 2 is going to come out?
Yeah, it's coming out June, like Last of Us 2 release date. So it was scheduled for May 29th, but they just announced that Ghosts of Tsushima and The Last of so The Last of Us Part 2 will be available on June 19th.
Okay.
And Ghost of Tsushima is coming out just under a month later on July 17th.
Nice. All right, boys, put that on your calendars, and if you haven't played Last of Us Part 1 yet, go play that.
Just do it, man. Yeah, even if you never get around to playing The Last of Us Part 2, The Last of Us Part 1, it's really good. And it's like you can get it for really cheap. It's one of those experiences that, there's no reason to, not spend a little time playing that.
Right.
Other than that, what are there any games that you're currently playing through right now?
Yes. Well, obviously I'm currently playing through Final Fantasy VII Remake still.
Yeah.
That game's great. I'm currently, as of the recording of this podcast, where am I? I'm at the part where it's like Tifa, Cloud, and Aerith, and they fight. They're like in that haunted, abandoned train station or whatever.
Yes.
They fight like the ghosts and stuff.
Yeah.
I just did that, and I think that's where I left off. That was interesting. That was weird. I'm on like chapter 11 right now.
Okay, so you're about to like witness the whole falling of the plate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of which, I saw Donkey's review of Final
What'd
Fantasy
you
VII.
call him, Donkey?
Oh, I mean, sorry, Donkey, my bad.
Yeah, there you go. Donkey. All right, yeah, you saw his review of it?
Yeah, it was funny. Did you
Yeah.
see it?
Yeah. It does spoil the ending, so.
That's fine.
But yeah, I thought it was funny. I think I think that's just kind of his thing, though, to just sort of like, take a shit on the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I loved the game. It seems like he did too. But yeah, it's just one of those things where I'm actually listening to a podcast right now where they're kind of talking about the ideas of remakes and how remakes will never be like, I mean, there are some instances where it's like if a movie came out like in the 1930s and then like in the 1970s they sort of did a remake, but like no one really knows that it's kind of like Scarface. The Scarface that everybody knows is a remake of a much older movie called Scarface.
Oh, okay.
And like nobody knows about that movie really. But people will still generally say, okay, yeah, that's the better remake. Once you find out that it's a remake and you watch them both, it's just kind of like remakes are sort of designed to keep up with the times of the current generation.
Yeah.
And I think Final Fantasy VII Remake is just one of those things where like the combat, for instance, has switched over from turn-based to action RPG.
Yeah.
And I think that's mostly due to like the people who are playing current video games right now, like the 14 to 17-year-olds who are like in their formative years right now and playing video games. Like that's what's more interesting than having to wait,
Yeah.
Whereas like people who are in their 30s who were like teenagers whenever the game came out in 1996 or 7 or something, they're still going to really enjoy that. Not everyone, but they're still going to really enjoy that turn-based over the action RPG. And it's just because it's the times that it came out, Yeah.
Just things change.
Yeah. But anyways, I loved it. I can't wait for you to beat it. It's great. I can't wait to have like a whole discussion about it.
Definitely. Speaking of remakes, something I've always thought about too is that like, because like whenever we always get like a remake of something really, really old. And I'm just thinking about like, what if we get a remake of like more current gen games? Like, way down? It's weird to think about. Like, could you imagine if like Final Fantasy 13 remake? Like that's crazy to think about. Because like even today, the game looks great.
Yeah. But maybe we can talk more about just like remakes in the future. But I agree. I think though that, let's take Final Fantasy 13 as an example. If they decided to remake that game, they could really make it a better game,
Yeah.
If they really decided to put as much love into just changing how everything works in the game as they are doing in the Final Fantasy VII remake, it's like they could, it's people won't give it shit for it's like hallways,
Right.
At least they could change it up in a way, where it's like, Final Fantasy VII Remake has hallways, but they sort of branch out. You can sort of explore a little bit,
That's true.
Make it to where you don't have to read all the data logs in order to understand the story.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. There's a lot of games that I definitely think could use a remake on the scale of Final Fantasy VII Remake, simply for the fact of just fixing a lot of the gameplay stuff. Like even if they left the graphics the same of Final Fantasy 13, but just changed the way that you explore and the way combat works and stuff.
Yeah, that could make more sense. I was thinking more on the lines of like graphic wise, but yeah, definitely like they could definitely do a lot of things with the combat to make it a lot more interesting.
Did you ever play that game or ever heard of the game Crysis?
Sounds familiar. Let me
So Crysis is like a shooter that kind of is like steampunky. you know, the last
Oh, okay, yeah.
the last Crisis game came out in 2013, I guess. Anyways, they came out with a trailer that they were remaking Crisis
Okay.
for modern consoles and stuff. Even though it's like a game that came out in 2007, and it's like, you know, graphics are fine still.
Mm-hmm.
But even, you know, it's like what's it called? Like the Call of Duty Modern Warfare games.
Yeah,
Those still have pretty fine graphics, you
that's
know,
true.
for today. You can still play those original Modern Warfare games,
Mm-hmm.
and it looks fine. But they just came out with Modern Warfare 1 and 2 remasters, you know, and they completely, you know, changed the graphics and all that.
Right.
But I would like to see, you know, because, you know, games are going to be around for such a long time, and Final Fantasy VII came out, I guess,
What was it, 97?
over 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
So, you know, in the next 20 years, what current game is going to be remade, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm sure we'll get eventually a Skyrim remake, you know? Like, even though it's one of those games that, you know, all they do is enhance the lighting and the textures and stuff, I'm sure pretty much they'll make another engine and just make the whole game again, but like on that engine.
Yeah, I can see that happening. Like when we're like 50 or something, then they announce or even when like 40, they just announce a Skyrim remake.
Yeah, honestly.
That'd be hilarious.
Okay, moving on. We beat Final Fantasy IX.
Yes,
And
we did.
yeah.
But unfortunately, you guys are going to see that.
Yeah.
Let me do a quick explanation. So pretty much the whole reason for this podcast, other than just to, you know, chat with the bros, is because as I was organizing some footage, because I got a new laptop, and I was transferring footage from my old laptop to this new one, and as I was in the middle of transferring, I accidentally deleted some of the videos. So the last 3 episodes of Final Fantasy IX, including the finale, were deleted. So unfortunately, I don't have that. I mean, I do have like 2 more episodes left that'll go up, but I mean, the last episode that I have, it ends when we get to Zidane's like hometown.
Yeah.
And so we're just gonna have a discussion about the game and talk about how good it was and all those different things and stuff.
I was talking to Nicole about this, my wife, and we were kind of like, I was like, yeah, we're gonna have this podcast because, you know, I mean, DJ had accidentally lost some of the footage, mostly pertaining to, you know, our very last sessions recording to the game. And then I don't know if you've watched Parks and Rec, but we're like, I got like 5 more episodes to go until I finish it. But there's a character in that show whose name is he goes by many names, but his real name is Gary. They call him Jerry, but they also call him Larry, Barry.
Yeah, I remember Jerry.
He's just kind of like, he's always doing stuff kind of like what DJ just pulled. And then we were laughing. We were like, wow, DJ is literally the Jerry of VideoVerse.
Pretty much.
So we love you, DJ. So yeah, Final Fantasy IX. We beat that game.
Yep.
And it was DJ's first time really seeing that the whole game play out.
That's true, yeah. I mean, I've always like known a bunch of different things, but like I never knew the context behind it. So seeing that was really, really cool. Like the whole VV thing.
Yes.
That was insane.
Yeah. No, it's like, you know, that's, man, I feel like just going back to remakes, I feel like if they were to remake Final Fantasy IX, like, dude, I feel like there's just so much more. Just like locations and characters and stuff.
There's a lot of variety.
A lot of writing, you know, so it's like, I don't know, I would almost just like the original game, like completely same story and everything, but just, you know, you can move the camera around and can jump around and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, man, there is a lot of just like detail and a lot of love just poured into like almost every single character in that game, besides like I forget her name. We called her Turbo Todd.
I
Eco?
don't know.
Is it Eco?
Ico? I don't know.
Eco.
Final Fantasy 9 characters. Can't spell. That's fine. Let's see. Oh, it's not even showing her. It shows Queen Bram, but not her. Ico, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, but anyways, that's not even the main point. Just like, they, for the most part, just all of the characters and the way that they all go through changes. Like Vivi starts off in the game as an extremely timid and just like, like has no sense of like actual self-worth,
Yeah.
in the beginning of the game. And then, you make it, maybe a little like, close to the end of disc 1, and then that's only heightened more by just his realization that his life is severely limited, not even just on the same scale as regular humans, but like 99% more shorter. Like only like a year to live. Like that's crazy. There's so many questions that it brings up, just like to the player's mind, of just like, well, what would you do if you just found out that you had only 10 more months to live?
Yeah, that's insane to think about.
So it's like, he goes through this whole up and down motion of just like, what is my identity really? And and then towards the end of the game, he becomes this very confident character who gladly stands up for his friends. And he just makes the most beautiful character change out of like any Final Fantasy character in my
sometimes it kind of even comes off like Vivi's more the main character of Final Fantasy 9 than Zidane, because of just how much he grows.
Yeah, because I think you definitely have a point there, just because I mean, whenever every single Final Fantasy game has like a central theme or message. I'm really only just thinking about Final Fantasy 9s right now, but
I can't really think of anything else.
but I know that with Final Fantasy 9, the theme is identity, and just like who are you? Like, who do you see yourself as? What is your identity? What do you live for? What do you stand for?
Right.
And so pretty much every single character in this game begins with this false sense of identity that they're really trying to hold on to that identity. And then as the game progresses, each character begins to have these realizations of I'm living a lie, essentially. And then
speaking of actually go ahead, sorry.
Well, yeah, and just like towards the end of the game, they all make such a big change. Like Steiner is no longer this like stick up his ass character who's just trying to do everything for the queen, because he has this character change whenever the queen becomes evil and all this stuff, or he finds out that she's evil and all that, or Garnet, and just like she's like this princess character, and she's trying to run away from all these things, but really she's trying to just know more about her past and all this. It's nuts, man. So good.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of central themes of Final Fantasy, I just looked that up, just like, what are the central themes of like each Final Fantasy game? And I saw a Reddit post where like someone just kind of made a guess on the different themes of Final Fantasies. And I think some of these definitely work out. Like for Final Fantasy 2, someone wrote Rebellion, and I think that definitely checks out, because I played majority of that game, and yeah, that's pretty accurate. Yeah. Final Fantasy 6, he just said, I don't know. But someone else, they said loss and moving on from tragedy.
Yes, I agree also. That's actually what I gained from whenever I first beat that game.
For Final Fantasy 13, somebody said destiny, breaking free from fate or whatever, or defying fate. Which, yeah, it's pretty true, because they have the weird like things or whatever. Final Fantasy 7. Final Fantasy 7, somebody said 7 is about going on after death. I don't know about that one. I guess. I don't know. For Final Fantasy X, someone made a guess and said fatherly love.
Hmm.
I was like, kind of.
I'm looking at the same Reddit post as you, by the way.
Okay, cool. For 15, they said friendship, which yeah, that's true. It's pretty
Yeah, I
accurate.
mean, it's literally a
The
story
whole
about
point
two
of
bros.
yeah.
Yeah. Another response, they say Final Fantasy IX's uh, theme is centered around life and death and the cycle of life, and I think
That's 100% for
that's
Vivi.
that's kind of a big part of what Zidane and Vivi experience most. Like they sort of experience those as I wouldn't say that's like the main theme of the game.
Yeah.
I think that the cycle of life and life and death though are big motivation factors into the idea of identity. And they experience life and death, and they find out who they like, how they were created and how they're gonna die and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Yeah, interesting. Another person says Nine's identity is reincarnation.
Reincarnation. Well, I mean, there's like a small part of it because at the end, yeah, but
Yeah,
I
I
don't know
don't
if
know if
like
that's the
essential
theme.
story.
But yeah, dude. So like, just the whole story of Final Fantasy IX, man. It
It's great.
starts off like really quaint, and
Mm-hmm.
and not like, I mean, obviously there's like very fantasy elements to, there's airships, and there's like queens and stuff, and there are like citizens are like hippos and birds and stuff like that,
Yeah.
like it's very whimsical and all that, but it doesn't start off necessarily in that same sort of gravitational pull that something like Final Fantasy VII does, where it's
Mm.
like, um, you're literally a terrorist, and,
Oh yeah.
and the first thing that you do as soon as you gain control of your character is you get into a battle, and it teaches you everything about the combat of the game.
Mm.
And it's like Final Fantasy VII really was like, at least of the PlayStation games, Final Fantasy VII had a big technical emphasis on just like the evolution of Final Fantasy games, and like, here's how you play games, here's the new way to play games. And
Definitely.
they added materia, which is a really awesome mechanic in the original game, but also serves as a big story point.
Right.
So that's really impressive that they were able to do that. Final
Mm.
Fantasy VIII was more so just kind of like, look what we can do with like visuals,
Mm-hmm.
instead of like playing around as Roblox characters.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Final Fantasy VIII in comparison to 7 looks so much better. And
yeah.
then Final Fantasy 9 looks so much better than Final Fantasy 8.
Well, so it looks better, but in the same way, it's a totally new art style. Final
Definitely.
Fantasy VII kind of left the art style up to the imagination,
Yeah.
because obviously, like, there were art portraits of characters, so you
Mm-hmm.
could sort of like envision in your mind what they look like,
Yeah.
like if they were real people. Whereas in Final Fantasy VIII's case, they really tried to make the characters in that game, just like their sprites and their models, look as close to those drawings as possible, while
Right.
also, trying to invoke that feeling that this is a real fantasy world, like these are real people and stuff. Whereas, it's just one of those things where Final Fantasy IX had a lot of controversy when it came out, because people thought that it was going to just get even more realistic right after that. But instead, they went with a more cartoony vibe, which,
Mm-hmm.
for me, The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker, I think, is the best looking Zelda game,
Mm-hmm.
specifically for its art style. Like, I love the art style in that game, which is also like, which goes hand in hand, just one of the reasons why Final Fantasy IX is my favorite game visually. It's because of that art style. And I don't think it's, I love chibi stuff. Like, that's not like my thing really, but it's like, I don't know, just that like break from the formula you know, in
Right.
order to like still tell a really compelling story. Like it just goes to show that no, it doesn't need to, you know, for you to connect to the characters, they don't have to look the same as you.
Yeah.
They can look like, you know, Vivi doesn't have a face at
Right.
all, you know? And like, but holy shit, is he not the most relatable character like
Absolutely.
in the whole franchise, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
And so yeah, man, like it's it's very interesting. It's one of those things where when it came out, because there was that controversy, not a whole lot of people played it as much. You know, when it came out because of that change of art style. You know, in the same way also people were really turned off to the Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker when that came out.
Yeah.
Because, you know, just that art style, oh, it's not what we expected, oh, blah blah blah. But I just, you know, the game does everything to just defy all expectations
Hmm.
with its music, with its story, with its visuals, with its gameplay. Like, you know, I could go on and on, but I think a lot of it also has to do with just, you know, this was the last game that a lot of the original Final Fantasy team was working on before, you know, just a lot of changes in the company happened. So like Hironobu Sakaguchi, this Final Fantasy IX was the last Final Fantasy story uh, that he worked on. I mean, I think he has like some special credits and he sort of does some scenario stuff for like for other games, but this was his like this was essentially his swan song. Like I made Final Fantasy 1 through 8. Now here is my last one, Final Fantasy 9. So they really went all out with the story, and man, like it goes crazy. If you haven't beaten Final Fantasy 9, like man, like if the beginning parts kind of turn you off, just believe me when I say like,
Yeah.
oh,
Power through it. It's a good experience. You'll love it.
yeah. No, it's like it gets freaking wild.
I agree. Speaking of earlier when you were talking a little bit about Final Fantasy VII and how like it kind of starts off with like mentioning how you're a terrorist, it kind of like reminded me how when me and Cole played Pokemon Coliseum, the game literally opens up with the main character blowing up a building and
Yeah.
like stealing some.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that says something about us, but for some reason that's like a really cool thing to do.
I guess, yeah.
It's like really really gripping.
But yeah, I guess I want to ask you like, okay, so with Final Fantasy IX, what would you say is one of your favorite moments from the game, and like just one thing about the game that you don't like, either like story wise or gameplay wise?
Um so as far as I think one of my favorite story moments of the game is whenever Garnet cuts her hair.
Ooh, yeah,
I just
that was
think that that's like just like one of the best character moments like in like the
yeah.
whole
Also, Garnet, she grows too a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, seriously, like everyone like does a character change. Even fucking 16 wheeler. I forget his name.
Uh,
What's his name? That's the character we named him that in our playthrough of the game.
yeah. So if you guys haven't checked out our playthrough, go do that. We
Yeah, we'll
named
put
our
them all in the
characters.
description.
Yeah. Let's see. What was his actual fucking name?
FF9 cast. um
Armorant.
oh, Armorant. Yeah.
Armorant. Okay. God, it's so weird to look at their actual names.
Yeah, they have like last names and stuff. I forget that Steiner's first name is Albert. Yeah.
We named him Wiener.
Yeah.
Elevator was Quina.
So yeah, even you know, Armorant, you know, 16 wheeler, even him towards the end starts to like really understand that Zidane literally does things out of just like his gut feelings.
Yeah.
And just like Zidane knows, you know, and this is like another change for him, but like throughout the story, he starts to realize, you know, like, oh, I'm not entirely sure, why I do the things that I do. But like, oh, it's the end of the game now. Okay, now I sort of understand. Like I do things, because I'm just like a really compassionate person, and I love my friends, and I do anything for them. And that's like something that, like I'm playing The World Ends With You right now, and I'm starting to better understand Armorant, because he's very similar to Neku in The World Ends With You. Starting off as just like a really cynical character who's just like, I mean, they're different because like Neku doesn't really care about anything, and Armorant is like, he's mostly just like hellbent on revenge and stuff.
Yeah.
But a lot of the same sort of like attitude and just like not really caring for people.
Mm-hmm.
And then towards the end, he starts to understand Zidane a little bit better, and he starts to question his own morals and all that stuff. So yeah, man, like fucking everyone is awesome.
Hell yeah.
But I forget, oh yeah, so one of my favorite I guess moments in the game. Yeah, definitely. There's a handful. But I'd say probably my favorite is whenever she cuts her hair and she truly creates her own identity.
Mm-hmm.
She's got answers and she's still got questions, but she's looking forward, and she cuts her hair and there's no looking back now.
Hell yeah.
And yeah, man, it's just like a really moving moment. And then just like,
that's how you do empowerment.
Yeah, and just the music too, man. For me, if you don't know this about me, music is a huge influence to me on my feelings and emotions toward a video game. I'm more likely to play a game for its soundtrack than I am for its gameplay.
Okay.
That's just kind of like how I roll, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'd say just one of my least favorite things, as far as the story goes.
Story-wise or gameplay-wise?
Yeah, so as far as gameplay goes, it's definitely just the speed of battles.
Yeah, that's true.
Like every single battle that you get into has a really long, sweeping opening. And like, the camera goes around to every single corner of the room that you're in,
trying to make it all cinematic.
The whole environment, and then finally you battle, and then
you gotta wait.
Yeah, waiting. You can sort of like speed that up in the original one, I think. And I know like in the remake you can remove the panning around the room stuff. But yeah, and then characters take a really long time to like kind of run up to an enemy and attack them, and that's just like some little nitpicks. They obviously, like I said, they were really trying to go all out with like all the technical stuff that they could do. Like, look at all these cool battle animations that we can do. Oh, it's like they're actually casting spells. Oh, it's so cool. They're not just swinging their sword and attacking them, like they're actually hurting them, and I think it's all really cool, and it was all very awesome when it came out.
Definitely.
But nowadays,
all right.
Nowadays, that's just one of those things about the game that doesn't really hold up the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as the story goes, yeah, I don't know. I think probably just like obviously, Aiko is like a little girl. And I know people will also give shit about Hope in Final Fantasy 13 because he's like super whiny.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. For me, I'm okay with that personally, because I know that Hope is a little boy.
Yeah, it makes sense.
He's
in like a very, very dangerous situation. He witnessed his mom dying.
Yeah, like I would also, obviously some execution aspects of all of that, could have been handled a little bit differently to help soften the blow of his whininess. But yeah, I don't know. Still, for me though, I don't know. I think it's just it's very cute every once in a while whenever she'll just like fall in love with Zidane over something.
Yeah.
But I remember whenever me and you were playing it, like that was also like, man, I wonder if like the developers knew how creepy this is. Like
Yeah,
obviously,
it's a little creepy.
like Zidane is also technically still a kid. Like they're all like him and Garnett are like 16 or something.
Mm-hmm.
She's like 6, you know?
Yeah, it's pretty young.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if it like says her name. Uh, 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 yeah, I don't know. But wait. Oh, never mind. Sorry. Yeah. So as far as, did you have another question for what I?
No, that's pretty much it.
What about you? Do you have any thoughts on favorite parts or least favorite parts?
Uh, I'd say for me, my least favorite part is the introduction of the final boss
Yeah.
of Final Fantasy IX. Just because it's just like he kind of just shows up out of nowhere, kind of lame. I mean, it was a cool boss fight, but just like story wise, just kind of like I don't care about this dude at all.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of other Final Fantasy games have done that. Like 4 kind of did that. 3 definitely did it. What other ones? There was one other one that did that. I can't remember, but just like I just hate it when games just kind of have a final boss that kind of just shows up out of nowhere with like no build up. Like Sephiroth and Kefka are amazing characters just because like they have so much build up and you get to spend so much time with those characters. They're just so great, and Kuja also too.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Like from the beginning, they're
In terms of
established as villains, and
yeah,
like they live through the story as continuously being the villain, and then they're like the last bosses.
yeah, definitely. I guess in terms of favorite moments, still just like the realization of, I mean, there's a bunch of great moments. For me, like the one that stands out the most is the realization of like VV only having a year to live, because that was definitely a huge shock to me. Like I did not expect that at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. It's nuts, man. Oh, Final Fantasy X. You Yevon. You
Oh yeah,
Yevon is the final boss of Final Fantasy X, and I mean Yevon is like talked about every once in a while, but it's a really dumb fight to me, and I hated it.
yeah. It was a boss fight where just like you can't lose.
Yeah.
Like everybody, I know everybody says that like the dad is more of the actual final boss because just how fucking hard he is,
Mm-hmm.
and he is really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, yeah. Did you have any other sort of thoughts on Final Fantasy IX before we?
Not really. It's just eventually I will actually beat that game myself, because right now, in terms of, well, originally I was gonna do Final Fantasy VIII next, but then Final Fantasy VII Remake showed up, so
Yeah.
that's more important.
Yeah.
So
For
how
sure.
I'm gonna do it is once I beat Final Fantasy VII, eventually I'll do 8, then I'll beat 15, and then 9, and then I need to finish 3 because I'm literally on the final dungeon of 3, but they always say, like in Pro Jared's video, and I 100% agree with this, that like the final dungeon just has a huge difficulty spike out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It is crazy. So I gotta grind for that. Then I can finally beat the game, and then and then Final Fantasy 2, which I'm not excited for, but I gotta beat it.
Yeah. Just for the sake of beating it.
Right.
I did beat that one on the Game Boy a long time ago, or the Game Boy.
I was very close to beating it. Like I literally was at the final dungeon, but in like the older Final Fantasy games, you have to like land your airship on a very like flat surface in order for it to work. But in Final Fantasy 2, in order to get to the last dungeon, you have to like land your airship like on the castle or whatever in order to get to the final dungeon. And every time I would try, it would never work, and I just got so frustrated. I just like stopped playing the game.
Yeah. Gosh.
I got to do that again, but that's fine. But yeah, eventually I'll beat Final Fantasy IX, and I would highly recommend anybody, if you're into JRPGs and Final Fantasy, definitely go play this game.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I am currently over halfway done with The World Ends With You. It's a really short game. I've been watching this guy called what's his name? Game Lit 101 or something. Hold on, let me think of it, because this guy deserves like all the credit in the world.
That VideoVerse credit.
Yeah, so he does Oh, games as literature.
Games is
Yeah, games as literature. So basically, he it's a guy um, who taught a video game literature class in high school.
okay.
Like
That's
he
cool.
taught that for a few years, and literally just for homework and for class assignments and stuff like that. Like in high school, like I would have loved to be in this class. They literally just he goes over game stories and stuff,
Mhm.
and just dissects the narrative and all the deeper meaning and stuff. So he has lots of videos on like Final Fantasy games, and about a year ago he made like a 6-part series dissecting The World Ends With You,
Okay.
and it's a really short game. Like it's not very long, and you can actually just like on the Nintendo Switch version and on the iPad or phone version, you can uh, you can change the difficulties around in the game, and you could beat that game in like a day, probably maybe 2 days.
Wow. Okay.
Um, but yeah, it's really good. Whenever I'm done with it, if you want to like play it just so that you could say that you beat a really short game pretty fast, just to check a game off your list or something,
Right.
I'll happily let you borrow it, because man, it's really good, and I really want to talk about it with some people.
Okay.
It has like the character development level of stuff like Vivi and
Oh, nice.
stuff like that. Like it's really 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 good. Highly recommend it. So yeah, any last things you wanted to talk about before we sign off?
No. I mean, I think we said what we needed to say. Just the COVID-19 situation. Final Fantasy is a cool game.
Yeah, pretty much. Cool. Well, yeah, so we'll leave links to our Final Fantasy IX playthrough in the description. And yeah, so if this is something that you want to continue listening to, we'll be glad to make little stuff like this every now and then. Now that we're still stuck inside for now, and we got time to do this sort of stuff, and we like doing it. And if you want to, if there's anyone who really wants to make a Discord server, or wants us to make a Discord server, we'll do that. We want to involve people as much as possible into our conversations, and we want to share our thoughts and opinions with everyone. But for now, that concludes this second episode of AudioVerse.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah. So thank you, DJ, for talking about this game with me.
No problem. Thank you, Gavin, for having me.
Yeah. All right. We will see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.